Hello, everybody. We just had a session on climate change, and I'm here with Professors Leach and Hayhoe from the University of Texas and the University of Alberta. I just wanted to say we have spent a fair bit of time having a discussion around where the government is going with respect to climate policy. As you know, during the 2019 campaign, this was perhaps the most important issue that was debated. Two-thirds of Canadians voted for parties that said that they would take significant action on climate. We committed to exceeding our 2030 target, and we are in the process of sorting out how we will do that. And certainly having experts like these to come and talk to us a little bit about their insights, both with respect to climate science, but also with respect to climate policy, is very helpful. And so be happy to take any questions, and I think they would be very happy to take any questions. And maybe I should just say in French, nous avons eu aujourd'hui une grande discussion sur le sujet du changement climatique. Pendant la campagne électorale de 2019, nous avons promis que nous voulons surpasser notre cible de 2030. Et aujourd'hui, nous avons discuté comment on peut faire ça, mais aussi la science de changement climatique et les initiatives qu'on peut faire pour surpasser la cible de 2030. Et nous pouvons adresser les questions maintenant. Merci.
This notion that the rebates are not enough for people who live, for example, in rural parts of Western Canada. Will you change the rebate system or adapt it to address those concerns?
Well, we're always looking at ways in which we can improve public policy once implemented, but I would say that we spent a lot of time thinking about how to address the concerns that were specific in terms of either provincial or regional. As you know, all of the money that is raised through the price on pollution goes back to the province in which it is raised, if in fact there is a federal system in place. There are adjustments for rural areas, but of course we are always looking to learn and to improve.
À propos des cibles dont vous parliez tout à l'heure de 2030, selon votre comptabilité, c'est pas encore atteint ces cibles-là. Comment vous allez faire pour les atteindre? À quel moment? Et comment vous allez faire pour atteindre celle de 2050? Qu'est-ce qui a été pris comme décision jusqu'à maintenant?
Nous avons fait beaucoup de progrès entre 2015 et 2019. Nous avons identifié plus de 200 mégatonnes de gaz à effet de serre. Mais nous avons dit que nous devons faire plus pour atteindre la cible de 2030. Et maintenant, nous avons promis que nous voulons surpasser cette cible et aussi d'atteindre net zero emissions par 2050. Et maintenant, je travaille très fort et nous avons discuté les initiatives. On peut adapter peut-être pour atteindre la cible de 2030. Mais pour 2050, nous avons dit que nous voulons avoir une panel pour discuter je ne sais pas le mot en français, mais les pathways pour 2050 avec les Canadiens et tous les Canadiens.
Mais qu'est-ce que nouveau? Parce que j'entends pas nouveau. J'entends rien jusqu'à maintenant qui dit comment atteindre la cible de 2030. J'ai rien entendu. Vous dites que vous voulez le faire, mais j'entends pas comment.
Oui, dans quelques mois, je vais offrir un plan pour comment on peut surpasser le cible de 2030. Mais pour aujourd'hui, nous avons une conversation des idées que peut-être forment une partie de cette plan.
Divides between different regions of the country, and any discussion about how to deal with provinces that may have stronger support for things like oil and gas or pipelines.
We certainly did, and certainly Professor Leach may want to comment on that. He's from Alberta. But we certainly did. It's certainly a very important conversation. We need to ensure that as we develop climate policy, that we are being sensitive to the concerns and aspirations of all regions of the country. I grew up in Saskatchewan. I used to work for the government of Saskatchewan. I'm quite familiar with a lot of the issues and the concerns that folks on the prairies have. And certainly that is something that we need to be ensuring we're reflecting on, and that we're working on as we put forward the evolution of our climate plan.
And was there any ways to do that? Pallister is looking for some flexibility on the carbon tax. He's meeting with the Prime Minister tomorrow.
you giving him any flexibility on the
Well, I mean, as I say, we're always open to conversations with folks about how we can improve public policy. But I would say that the price on pollution is a national program. It works in part because it's national in scope. One of the fundamental bases is that it actually has stringency that's similar across provinces, and that the pricing is similar across provinces. If there are ways in which we can respond to some of the concerns that Premier Pallister has, we're certainly open to talking about that. But I would tell you that we just went through an election campaign where the price on pollution was a key part of the discussion, and 2/3 of Canadians voted for parties that support a price on pollution. It is the most effective and efficient way to reduce emissions, and maybe I should actually ask Dr. Leach to talk about that as an economist. He certainly knows that that is in fact the case. Do you want to just comment on Alberta?
So, do you want specific questions, or was that just a segue from? Yeah. So.
Okay.
I'm.
Monsieur Wilkinson, juste expliquant et déposer un plan qui permettrait de surpasser les objectifs de 2030 au cours des prochains mois. Ça, c'est d'ici quelques mois, donc vous allez déposer un nouveau plan déjà?
Oui, j'ai dit que Canada veut avoir une nouvelle cible quand nous allons aller à COP 26 à Glasgow, et nous devons développer un plan et parler avec les Canadiens, mais nous avons seulement commencé maintenant les discussions.
At all that what's happened in Newfoundland, for instance, in this past few days, is that a repercussion or a symptom of climate change?
Actually, the climate scientist could probably speak.
Yes, I am a climate scientist, and one of the things we look at is to what extent climate change exacerbates or amplifies an event. Whenever something extreme happens, we often ask, was that climate change? But that's the wrong question. The question is, did climate change make it worse? And what we see is that a warming planet is increasing the precipitation across our country, especially in the more northern parts, and that includes Newfoundland and Labrador. We see these increases happening primarily during winter and spring. And that means that if temperatures are below freezing, which they often are, that extra precipitation will fall as snow. So the event that we saw was an individual weather event, but we do know that on the long-term trend, climate being the average statistics of weather over at least 20 to 30 years, we do see an increase in precipitation, especially in the winter and spring seasons.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. Yes.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we hadn't planned on doing. We would bring out, first of all, Ian Anderson, current president and CEO of Trans Mountain Corporation. He was joined by Bill Down, who I'm not sure exactly where Bill is, but anyway, Bill joined them on the stage. He's the chair of the TMX Board of Directors. And Linda Cody, who led Finance Canada's Advisory Committee of Experts on Indigenous Economic Participation. They gave us an update on where TMX is right now. We thought this would be a good opportunity for them to share some of what they shared with us. So why don't I'll leave it to you. I won't get the order wrong.
Okay, well, no, good. Ian, go first.
You want to start? Sure.
I'll start. I certainly provided Cabinet with an update on the project, and that update would go something like, we have obviously commenced construction of the pipeline in Alberta. We've got just over 3 kilometers in the ground just west of Edmonton, and the weather has prevented us from having a bit more in the ground, frankly. We're continuing our work in Burnaby and Westridge, building those facilities. I expect to be on the ground working in British Columbia, probably in North Thompson, sometime after the snow melts. And after we're out of some of our migratory bird windows. So we're ready to go in the interior of British Columbia. We're ready to go, obviously, in the rest of Alberta, and we're working hard in Burnaby. I've got just over 2,700 people working right now. A good 10% of those are Indigenous peoples from principally Alberta. We've got contractors who are out now entering subcontractors with many Indigenous partnerships and joint ventures, and that we hope to be a real success story of this project once we're completed. We certainly still have some work to do. We still have some permits to get from British Columbia. We still need some approvals from the Canadian Energy Regulator, but those are in hand and they're in progress. And we're, as I said, we'll be working on virtually all locations by sometime later this year.
What's the timeline for completion?
Timeline for completion, you know, we're still working on the details because until I'm working everywhere, I won't know specifically how long it might take. But we're currently estimating mid to late 22 for completion at this point.
Lynn, did you want to make a comment?
Yes. Hi, everyone. I chaired the independent advisory panel to Minister Morneau on Indigenous economic participation in TMX. This was a process that ran late this summer and early this fall, concurrent with some stakeholder or some consultation that the ministry was doing directly with 129 communities directly along the route for the project. Both reports were filed to the government earlier this fall, and what I can tell you about the findings is that they pretty much converged. I think there was agreement among the Indigenous communities that were consulted, as well as the panel that I was on, that there is a way forward for Indigenous economic participation in the project. Equity is one way to do it, but there's a lot of interest among Indigenous communities in other forms of revenue sharing or other mechanisms that might take place, and a lot of interest in pursuing that process to get it done within the next 12 months.
Mr. Anderson, what do you think the message is Canadians will take home today when they're watching the Environment Minister come forward and talk about climate change, and then all of a sudden you're here and you talk about a pipeline? What do you think Canadians will think at home when they hear and listen to this?
I think what Canadians want to continue to appreciate is that responses to climate change, responses to the environmental conditions that we have before us and all the things you heard the minister are critically important to our nation, but so too is economic development, trade of our resources. And the oil that we're going to move in this pipeline is going to be consumed. It's going to come from somewhere. Why not from Canada? Why not from a place that has the highest standards of regulation, the highest standards of responsible development in the world? So I just think it's not an either or. I think the two are very, very compatible. I mean, my objective is to complete a project that will return to the private sector one day, and it will be more valuable, more beneficial to Canadians than what they acquired a year ago.
Can you give us an update on the legal process? We had a ruling last week, but there are still a couple of outstanding challenges we had legally.
Yeah, the ruling this week from the Supreme Court was encouraging. Obviously, it was very positive for the project. I think the defining feature of that ruling wasn't so much what it was, but how swiftly it was rendered. We do still have one federal court of appeal process that completed in mid-December. The judges have that evidence now, and they are considering it. We can't predict when a decision might come, but there is no injunctive action to prevent me from building, so we're building, and we're continuing with our good work on the project. I expect the federal court of appeal decision will be sometime this year.
Do any of you speak French? Or no, not really. Okay. Well, I still have a question. Mr. Wilkinson just said before that he wants new targets for 2030, environmental targets. I just wanted to know if that's compatible with TMX.
I don't think I can comment on the targets or what the minister said. I mean, what I said earlier is that I do believe that this project is important for resource development in our nation, and it will provide economic value and benefit to Canadians that can be, in part, used towards achieving some of those targets.
And I will take a stab at it, only to say that I realize intuitively it does sound strange that you have one minister coming out here talking about concerns of climate change and another one coming out here talking about pipelines, but they are in fact not contradictory, because this country is the 5th largest producer of oil in the world. If we don't have everybody serious about net zero, we are never going to get to be where we need to be. So we need to have a sustainable and healthy private sector. We need to have a sustainable and healthy oil and gas industry. And in order to do that, they need to be able to get their product to market. So it all does come full circle. It's a more complicated story to tell, but it's essential that we tell it because the future of the country, I believe, relies on it.
My question is it compatible with stricter targets in your view?
Yes, it is. But Linda, did you want to step in?
Oh, well, I was just going to make the point that in the consultation, initial consultation anyhow, with many of the Indigenous communities, there's a lot of interest in this project because they see the ability to take the money from the project and invest it in clean energy in their communities. So, you know, it's very much positioned and seen among those groups that are interested in participating economically as part of this transition. So part of that plan, recognizing that that's a 10 to 15-year plan, right?
Last question. This is good news for Alberta and Saskatchewan. Do you think it will help lower the temperature in those two provinces in terms of anger towards the federal government now that this project is fully going ahead?
Well, I know that this project is tremendously important to Albertans and to people in Saskatchewan and a number of other Canadians as well. And I know that there are, you know, a number of people who have questioned whether or not we were sincere in our objectives. And now it's happening. It is happening. This pipe is going in the ground. We've got 3.1 kilometers built, and it will continue on through the winter. And it will be built. And I hope it does, you know, as you said, change the temperature somewhat, because we are going to need, all of us, every part of this country is going to need to be involved in achieving net zero. There's no two ways about it. Thank you.